Hello, School Transportation Nation. Tony Corbin here with School Transportation News. Glad you made it to the podcast today. Episode 180. Really exciting. Guys, it's brought to you by TransFinder, the leader in school bus routing software. We have a couple new partners, Adroit and the Propane Education Research Council, also known as PERC. Today, our special guest is going to be Tommy Smith, General Manager, Vice President, Suffolk Bus Service in New York, Long Island to be exact. And before we get started, talking to Mr. Ryan Gray, always great with headlines. We got a lot of headlines this week. Also, we got the October issue out now, guys. If you haven't read it, brand new October issue. On the front cover is Tommy Smith and the team from Suffolk Transportation, in addition to the new president of Bluebird, Britton Smith. Great conversation and Q&A with Britton inside, so go check that out. Go to the STN website. Check out that October issue. Lots of great content this month. All right, guys, before we get started, we have a special message from our sponsor. Adroit is an alternative student transportation platform that complements the school bus and helps districts with their special needs and McKinney-Vento transportation for students utilizing its fleet of specialized vehicles. Adroit provides world-class technology that connects all stakeholders involved in student transportation transactions. The company provides transportation solutions for school districts, counties, non-public schools, and school busing agencies to assist their special transportation needs. You can learn more at goadroit.com. That's goadroit, spelled ADROIT.com. Goadroit.com. All right, guys, we're back. I've got with me the always extraordinary Ryan Gray, editorial, just awesomeness oozing out everywhere. Ryan, what is going on in the world of school transportation, my friend? We got like breaking news from the EPA, $500 million, just like they haven't even announced round 2 yet, and they drop another 500 mil on everybody like out of left field. It kind of took people by surprise, I think.
Yeah, so I caught wind of it the day before, actually. And so I got a little bit of advance notice. So, but certainly, yeah, the details came out on September 28th. $500 million. It could be more. So last year, we remember that the EPA started off with $500 million. They were worried about this program, the rebate, being undersubscribed. Then they saw the interest and they opened it up to nearly $1 billion. So EPA left that window open. But it's going to be a rebate similar in some respects to what we saw last year. But there will be some subtle differences. One thing that we do know, repowered electric school buses as well as biofuel school buses remain ineligible. So we're talking about new school buses. They upped the model year to 2022. So it has to be at least a 2022 model school bus. The funding is not quite as high as what we saw, especially with the most recent competitive grant. $345 topping out for class 7 or 8. So we're talking our larger transit school buses. $265,000 for a class 3 to 6 electric school bus. So that's basically everything else. That's including the charging infrastructure, by the way. So behind the meter. So everything that once we get to inside the yard, they're paying for design and engineering, some consulting, which is new. They're also, in terms of propane buses, topping out at $35,000 for class 7 and 8, $30,000 for class 3 through 6. If it's a CNG bus, which nominal, but there still is some fleeting interest out there in CNG. That's up to $45,000 for class 7 and 8 and $30,000 for class 3 to 6. So we do know that instead of 3 months, because of the potential government shutdown, so by the time this podcast comes out, we will either have a federal government shutdown or we won't. But just in case, EPA said they're going to give an extra month for applications to come in. So basically looking at January 31st at 4 p.m. Eastern time to get those applications in.
Yeah, I know, Ryan. My first reaction was they're underfunding the equipment significantly, right? Like we know that this stuff is going up in price. So is that going to disincentivize school districts from going after this? Or are they looking at it and thinking, well, hey, they got money already from the state. Now, does it say anything about stacking funds? Because I know a lot of this stuff was like, you can't stack funds and
No, you can.
state programs, but you can. Okay.
You can't. Yeah. So they talked about it in a webinar last Thursday after making the announcement. I sat through that, most of it anyways. And similar to what the program has been, they do allow for stacking of state funds and other funds. But you need to be careful. It cannot be federal funds. So the clean school bus money is the only federal money that's allowed. School districts like those in California where there's umpity-ump grant programs, you can stack as many as you want on there. You need to make sure, though, that those state funds, even though it might come from a state program, that it doesn't trace back to the feds. So that's one of the things you have to pay attention to. To your point about the lower money totals, I mentioned EPA held a informational call with a lot of environmental NGOs the day before dropping the rebate program publicly. And what I had heard from some folks that were on that call was that essentially EPA recognizes that they can't fund everything with the money going up in terms of costs, but that they're really looking for price parity with diesel especially. And their thinking is that you add in, say, $345,000 for a Type D electric school bus. You add that to the money that a school district would already be budgeting for that bus, and it should more than cover that, again, and including the infrastructure. So that is some of the thinking. Also, too, there is that Inflation Reduction Act incentives that school districts can utilize. So in that respect, we're looking at like the clean vehicle tax credit. So that's $40,000 right there that can be added on. There's $100,000 in alternative fuel vehicle refueling property credit. So under IRA. So those are additional monies that are available.
Yeah, I noticed also, kind of dovetailing into the TSD conference, $20,000 for a bus with a wheelchair lift that's under this program too. That's kind of an interesting addition, kind of unexpected. I wonder where that came from.
Yeah, well, I think that was a lot of the feedback. So EPA has been gathering feedback throughout this entire process. We held a Q&A session with EPA and Department of Energy and the Joint Office of Energy and Transportation in Reno at STN EXPO. So that was, at the time I implored the attendees to come armed with their questions. They did, and then some. It's very rare to get the feds in a conference setting to kind of take questions off the cuff. So they did a great job with that. They answered what they could, but that was brought up during that session. And I know it's been brought up previously as well. So I think that is reflective of some of that feedback. We're going to have a session on electric school bus for special needs routes at TSD in November. So looking forward to that, and certainly going to talk about wheelchair lifts. We're in planning that and releasing that on the agenda. This was, of course, before the rebate came out and this news came out, but certainly that's going to be a part of the conversation. What's the impact on wheelchair lifts in terms of energy draw and AC? We know that, the routes, the stops are longer. It takes longer to load a lot of students with disabilities than it does general education routes. So we're going to be talking with some fleets that have some experience just to try to get down to the nitty gritty on this again, and arm people with as much information as possible.
Yeah, I also saw some considerations for our friends in Hawaii and Alaska, as well as the other territories out there that would be able to get a cost reduction or a benefit for shipping, because it's a little more expensive to get vehicles to Hawaii and Alaska and the territories. So I think that was a $10,000, Ryan. Did I see that right? Was it
$20,000? Yeah.
$20,000. All right. So if you're in Hawaii or Alaska, you got an extra $20,000 for shipping and drayage fees, I guess, to get all the vehicles out there. So that's always good for those considerations. So hopefully STN EXPO and Green Bus Summit, maybe we're providing the feds a little information, Ryan, to make informed decisions. I like to think so.
Absolutely. Well, they've been more than willing to partner with us the last couple years. We had a contingency out at STN EXPO Indianapolis as well in June. So they're definitely engaged. They definitely are looking to us to help them get out to the people, get their message out, and get feedback. So that's been much appreciated, and certainly, looking forward to working with them again in 2024.
Yeah, guys. So if you're considering applying for the EPA funds, you didn't apply round one, you didn't apply round two, you're thinking round three might be our chance. I think the big hangup is, Ryan, people really feel like, I don't qualify, right? I don't have the buses to scrap. So like the scrappage, or, we saw people, they were favoring different areas with a certain level of poverty line. And I know LA and Chicago and a few cities were saying, look, we don't meet this criteria, but they've adjusted the program a little bit for those considerations. Can you share a little bit about kind of what that was listed or what came out of the webinar?
Sure. Actually, the headline of my article on stnonline.com, what really jumped out at me in talking to some of the stakeholders when they first learned from EPA last Wednesday about this, was that, EPA was adjusting a bit. So under the bipartisan infrastructure law, they're basically targeting that at least 40% of the funds need to go to what are termed as non-priority school districts. So not to say to the point what Chicago and LA Unified and some others were saying last year was like, wait a second, we service a lot of these kids who are in underprivileged, impoverished areas, but by the letter of how the U.S. Census defines historic impoverished areas, it's looking at only certain areas of the country, a lot of tribal nations. So that's why the tribal nations have long been a priority under this program. So you can actually find an interactive map, and it's linked in my article on stnonline.com. It's called the RAISE mapping tool. The Department of Transportation uses it for their grant project location verification. It's a tongue twister. So you can go there and see if your district meets those requirements. You probably already know, but this is the program's attempt to, I think, balance out the funds a little bit more, because they're recognizing that a lot of school districts just would not apply because they're like, we're not on this priority list, so what's the point? So that's why they're trying to use this, at least 40% figure to try to entice more people and more of these larger disadvantaged districts to apply.
Yeah, I mean, still, Ryan, the big 800-pound elephant in the room is infrastructure, right? So infrastructure is facing the issue of not being available at the utility level, the switchgear, being able to build out a substation at your school district. People just are like, how do I take this on? Now, there's a lot of providers of equipment and battery storage, and we've seen a lot of, we'll call it hybrid-based bat storage, where they drop a container on your lot and you definitely see and feel that the storage can be, captured using renewable energy, propane energy. They're pulling energy from the buses, but it still requires the public utilities to be involved at some degree.
Absolutely.
But there are some that they just drop it in and it's good to go, but you can't scale, right? It's good for a few, but it's not good for hundreds.
No, absolutely. And, to your point, some of that equipment that you mentioned, that's eligible for funding. So the fast chargers, DC fast chargers, EPA Energy Star certified AC level 2 chargers. So you need to make sure those AC level 2 chargers are EPA Energy Star certified. I mentioned earlier the design and engineering, installation costs, related software, to monitor the bus and infrastructure performance, those battery energy storage systems that you mentioned. But your question is like, but if we don't have the behind the meter, as they say, stuff ready to go with the front of the meter from the utility, it makes no difference. And I'm hearing from folks that if you started today with the utility, it's going to take you at least a year. And folks are saying, well, but wait a second, how do we get buses and apply for buses knowing that, and when everybody's saying, hey, you need the infrastructure first? So I think it comes back to something we've been talking about for a long time, with the benefit of 2020 hindsight. Perhaps the infrastructure should have been funded first, but as we've also discussed, that's not very politically sexy. There's not going to be many votes won or babies kissed or hands shaked when you're talking about infrastructure, and kind of eyes glazed over when you're talking about front of the meter and behind the meter, and all that kind of jargon. So that's kind of the tipping point. I think that we're approaching this is like the success of this program hinges on successful deployments. And if people aren't able to even get the infrastructure to get the deployment off the ground, well, there's a problem. So I think that, it's all hands on deck right now, just trying to get the information out there, and getting folks to engage early and often with your utilities, as well as all of your equipment and service providers, your OEMs. Lean on those OEMs. I mean, they all have consulting services now. I know that a couple, one that comes to mind right offhand, IC Bus, announced earlier this year that they're basically partnering with an electric, utility construction firm, just to basically become a project manager for customers. Just to take on all of that information and all that work, because like you're talking about, it's a mountain of a project to take on when you're a school district, and especially when you're transportation and you're not used to dealing with all those kind of things. School districts have facilities, they have directors of facilities and whatnot, and buildings. Engage those people, absolutely. But you can definitely see that there's a need out there, and the industry is trying to fill it the best they can.
Yeah, we'll be curious to see what the reaction is from the industry as they kind of digest this information and really kind of come back. Because, Ryan, if I'm not mistaken, have we even really seen the money deployed yet and the equipment deployed in the field from these first rounds? I don't really hear about it. Maybe a couple? Anything?
No, but I think it's the money just from the first rebate is still just getting out there to folks. So I do know that I believe a bus that was secured through EPA, I'd have to check on that, in Illinois was received the other day. I'm going to have to check on that. But, there's so many grants out there. You add in the VW money and different state programs. It's really hard to keep a thumb on the pulse of that. But this is stuff, especially with the delays we've seen in the supply chain and manufacturing, that are impacting this kind of stuff. So we had talked a little bit a while ago, Tony, about maybe some of these chassis delays might benefit some districts in buying them some time to get infrastructure in place. And now we have this UAW strike that's impacting, further impacting Type A chassis. There's been a shortage of those to begin with. So, yeah, I mean, it's kind of a perfect storm of issues that are begotten by, this great opportunity. So, everyone's trying to work their way through, and we're definitely talking to folks and trying to stay on top of, what's happening, what are they able to do, what are some of the sticking points, and there seems to just be a lot of the latter.
All right, Ryan, take a little break. Hear a message from one of our sponsors. Well, the votes are in and STN EXPO attendees have spoken. TransFinder was overwhelmingly selected as the best software and best hardware for 2023 at STN EXPO in Reno, Nevada. Yes, you heard that right. For the first time ever, TransFinder received the Innovation Choice Award for best hardware. And for the second year in a row, TransFinder has won the best software award, adding to numerous past awards TransFinder has won for its software products. TransFinder's move into hardware was driven by client demand. TransFinder now provides the tablet, the mounts, the card reader, and more as part of its one partner, one solution approach. Guys, you can learn more by visiting transfinder.com or calling them at 800-373-3609 or email them at getplus@transfinder.com and make sure you put STN podcast in the subject line. So Ryan, let's talk a little more about the government shutdown. I know you touched on it a little bit. Is there really any impact to school transportation?
No, but yes. So a lot of the folks out there realize that their funding, state block grant funding, whatever you want to call it, is done a year ahead of time. So what happens is the federal government, a lot of you out there that you know how this works, but for those who don't, the feds basically front state budget money for K through 12 education. The fiscal year, of course, for the feds does not start till October 1st, which that's what this whole government shutdown's about. The Congress has not funded the next fiscal year yet. But school districts get their money on July 1st. So they're fronted that money. So they've basically already been fronted money for the next school year. Where it would rear its ugly head is if this was protracted for a long period of time, and likely it's not going to. Now, we've had 15 government shutdowns. Generally speaking, if Congress doesn't in the 11th and a half hour ram home some kind of agreement, they do in a few weeks. It lasted a couple months under President Trump. But where we see the impact greater is on federal direct funding. And what we're talking about there is certainly Indian tribal governments, Head Start, potentially school districts if they have service area that's on federal land. It can be, again, a Indian tribal government, or it can be national parks. So we have a lot of those up in the Montana area and South and North Dakota, for example, Alaska, all throughout the country. So any of those school districts might be kind of getting a little anxious. A couple of the folks that I talked to that would be affected, they have short-term money. They told me. I spoke with one district in Arizona that's on Navajo Nation. They said that they're good for the next month or so. But if the shutdown goes any longer than that, then they're going to have to go to Plan B. So we'll again see by the time this comes out. Hopefully, Congress got with the program. But it's looking likely at this point when we're recording this that there would not be an agreement reached. So time will tell.
Got it. All right. Well, let's switch gears. Talk a little bit about the TSD conference. Guys, if you haven't been to the website yet, Ryan has got his schedule up. The classes are listed. The speakers are listed. I know it's like herding cats, Ryan, to get all the stakeholders because we got so many experts that come together to talk about all these great topics that you have around special needs, McKinney-Vento, students with disabilities. Talk to us a little bit about what you have in store for the audience if they've signed up or if they're kind of on the fence about signing up for the TSD conference.
Absolutely. So a lot of talk about service and what's possible. Maybe some outrageous expectations placed on school bus drivers. Probably not news to any of you out there. One of the big cases or incidents most recently that ties into this is that choking death on board that New Jersey school bus in July. Very reminiscent of a very famous case. Any of you student transporters out there that focus especially on special needs and were around back in 1999 will remember the tragic death of Cynthia Susavage in Pennsylvania. She was a little girl. I believe she had several disabilities, brittle bone disease being one of them, but where she basically needed postural supports. And she was on the school bus seat, and her vest was improperly secured, and she choked to death. She was nonverbal, and we have a lot of those kind of kids who can't advocate for themselves. And if something is not done correctly, they cannot just tell somebody, "Hey, you know what? This is too tight. I'm choking." And you factor in a monitor who allegedly was on her ear pods and on her cell phone, seated rows away from little Foster Williams, who died in New Jersey. Now she was in a wheelchair, so a little bit different than Cynthia in Bucks County, Pennsylvania, in 1999. But and we had a similar case to little Miss Williams from Polk County, Florida, in 2018. So we're going to have a special general session on that. We're bringing back the great, wonderful Peggy Burns, tenured faculty emeritus, long time.
Peggy Burns, I thought she was retired. Is she back again?
She is retired, but Cynthia Sue Savage, like a lot of student transporters and folks aligned with the industry, that was really struck a chord with her. And that's really one of the major tenets that Peggy preached about was collaboration and oversight and work and communication with contractors. So that was a contractor. The similarity with the New Jersey case from the summer, that was also a contractor. So a lot of the folks who have been going to TSD for years, for decades, literally, know that a lot of the conference is built on that collaboration between transportation departments and special education departments, but also those contractors. So really near and dear to her heart. And when she knew or found out that what we were planning, she said that there was just no way she couldn't be involved. So she's going to be a part of that general session on Friday, November 17th, along with our new special ed expert extraordinaire, Betsy Helfrich. She's back. She's going to be leading that conversation. Joining Peggy will be Sue Schutrump, of course, another tenured faculty star that we have. So Peggy and Sue were intimately involved with that Sue Savage case. They both provided training to the school district and the contractor after the case was adjudicated. The judge found fault with the school district as well as the contractor and others for lack of oversight and lack of proper training. And it was one of those rare cases that actually went all the way to a jury trial. And a lot of them get settled out of court and we never hear about them. So we're going to be talking about that and the equipment ramifications. We're going to break out after lunch following this general session, go into the Occupational Therapist, Physical Therapist Transporter Forum, otherwise known as OTPT Transporter Forum, that Sue leads with her gang of experts. And they're going to dive deeper into the topic of equipment for these students. So really big aspect to our conference this year. Other things, a lot of behavior. I mean, we had Dr. Ben Springer on the podcast recently, as well as, I mentioned Betsy Helfrich. She was on a couple of weeks ago. We have the evacuation experience, if you will, hands-on training that we've expanded to 2 days. So we have the first class will be held on Saturday, November 18th. And we're going to come back. We're going to have a second class offered on November 20th. That's the final day of the conference. So, and of course, sandwiched in between, there's the trade show. Lots of great networking opportunities as well. A lot of learning that's to be had in Frisco. So we're really looking forward to it.
Great lineup, Ryan. Great lineup, man. I know you're teasing everybody with this evacuation training. Guys, day one is already sold out.
Yep.
Day two on Monday, there are a limited amount of seats available, so don't wait. Register for the TSD conference. We got our early bird registration available till October 13th. Be sure to go on to tsdconference.com, register, lock in that early bird rate before it's too late. I know we're selling out at the hotel. Maybe a couple seats left in the NHTSA safety seat training, not so much left there. We had to expand it. We had sold out. We added 10 more seats. So guys, do not wait. It is coming up. We are like 50 days out, 45 days out. Time is just ticking away. So we hope to see you there in Dallas, Frisco, Texas, November 15th through the 20th. All right, guys, before we get to our interview with Tommy Smith from Suffolk Transportation Service and Mr. Ryan Gray, a message from one of our sponsors. All right, guys, we have a great green tip for you this week, brought to you by the Propane Education Research Council. They want to talk to you about propane. It's energy for everyone. Did you know that school buses fueled by propane can help you reduce emissions in your community while saving you money? Propane school buses have a lower average carbon intensity than electric school buses over their lifetime by more than half, and they emit up to 96% less nitrogen oxide than diesel buses. All of this from fleets with the lowest total cost of ownership. It's no wonder propane is the most widely used alternative fuel in the school bus industry. You guys can learn more at betterourbuses.com. That's betterourbuses.com.
All right, let's welcome to the School Transportation Nation podcast stage Thomas Smith, VP of School Bus Operations and Business Development at Suffolk Transportation in Long Island, New York. Tommy, as you're affectionately known. How you doing? Thanks for joining us today.
Good. How are you? Glad to be here. Thanks for the invite.
Absolutely. Glad to have you. I know, like a lot of student transporters, you guys are up to your eyeballs in the school bus driver shortage. We're going to talk about that in a little bit. But the real reason we had you on the podcast today was to talk about the company's recent Green Bus Fleet Award that was given out at STN EXPO Reno in July. Suffolk won for the regional and local school bus contractor category, and really for your adoption of electric school buses. And there's been a lot in the news, obviously, with electric school buses. As we were recording this, Clean School Bus program with the EPA came out with its 2023 rebate program, all those details. But Tommy, Suffolk was really ahead of the curve on electric buses, even before electric buses, hybrid buses, going back to like 2012. Do you want to share with our audience a little bit of, first of all, background on Suffolk, and then how you guys came about really leading the charge with green buses there in New York State?
Yeah, so our company's based in Bayshore, Long Island, New York, and part of our operation, we're solely based in one county, so really close proximity to the different depots within that region. So it's really nice. We're not spread out in like a tri-state atmosphere. So everything's in one location, which makes operations much more simpler. We run about 1,600 vehicles in Long Island in the school arena, both large bus and van. And then we also have a paratransit and fixed route fleet as well that we run for the county of Suffolk. So we kind of like a multifaceted pupil transportation program in place. And it's a large family business that basically has been owned by the same family since the 70s. John Corrado, I work side by side with him and a great team as well, putting together the operation. And really encouraging. John has been always great with being forward with moving the company forward with technology, and also, like you discussed, the hybrid vehicles. Back in 2010, we saw a lot of the changes with the emission controls on the diesel vehicles getting more complicated as time marched on, and just the cost dramatically changing on those vehicles, and also the drop in MPGs. So we were interested in testing hybrids, building hybrids from our primary purchase, which is Bluebird, and just trying our best with a local technology company, trying to solve the challenges that we have with those vehicles. We're considering about, if we had the gas engine in the vehicle and have the hybrid plug-in battery power there to just simplify the engine with the hybrid component and get away from the diesel entirely. And that basically molded into, we wanted to get to a point where we could work with Bluebird and be able to get them to either create a fully functioning hybrid vehicle for that purpose, or, the end game, which is the electric vehicle. And it was really good because we did a great job being able to prove the technology and then share it with Bluebird. And, they were the first ones in our area to come up with some early technology. I think it was Adamane. And, we operated some Generation 1 units that came through in 2019. They were a challenge, and we expected the challenge. Being first in anything, you were going to work out the kinks. But some of the best experiences there is that their team, through the dealership and the OEM, they really listened to our troubles, and we're really able to put together a great package for the next generation vehicle that we're currently operating right now. Just 11 right now, but the experience has been much better on having those on the road for our districts.
And really one of the leaders, if not the leader, in terms of electric school buses in New York State, where suddenly, Tommy, I know we were joking about this a little bit before we started recording. You guys are facing a pretty fierce mandate coming up there, 2027. Anybody who purchases a new school bus, it has to be zero emissions, which, as we know today, that means electric. By 2035, the entire fleet has to be zero emissions vis-a-vis electric. 1,600 school buses. How are you guys going to meet this mandate? How many new buses, first of all, do you guys purchase every year, give or take?
Just it depends. Anywhere from 50 to 100 large buses per year. So it's a pretty challenging number, especially right now when you're talking with the OEMs of what they can produce.
Mm-hmm.
They're building many more diesel and gasoline vehicles than the electric. So that's a challenge right there. What really does make me nervous, the vans are anywhere also probably 50 to 100 on the vans, and we have a very large van operation. I think the best solution with the vans is you either get the Ford or GM chassis that rolls out that's on a proven unit, like whether it's the F-150 Lightning that comes out on a Ford chassis or any of the GM products that are out there. It'd be nice to be able to get that chassis fully electrified that's proven and build the body on top of it. So we're kind of waiting for that technology to get to the school bus market. It's a small market for those OEMs building the chassis, but that's one component. We're waiting for that to move and being able to have something that's going to be functioning at a high level and proven. The buses, like I said, the Generation 2s have been really good. And the mandate is for surely challenging. We are excited about the change, what it's going to do for our maintenance shops. What can we be more efficient with? How are we going to service these vehicles? What are we going to be saving? How are we going to change all the dynamics? We're thinking that we're not going to need nearly as many bays to do it. I think the biggest mechanical we're going to be involved in is basically brake changes. Everything else is going to be utility maintenance and technology, whether you're tapping into the system to find out what's wrong with the electronics. But I don't think it's going to be a heavy lift like we do now.
Absolutely. And I was never a math major, but, again, back to your if you have 1,600 buses in your fleet, say, 12 years from now, give or take, you need to have all of those supposedly zero emissions. That's if you're buying on a good year 100, and you made a great point there. Can the OEMs meet it? And we know today they can't. Time will tell, what things look like in 12 years. But if they're able to not only satisfy the needs of Suffolk, but every other district, every other company in New York. Oh, and then by the way, we're also looking nationwide. And, we know that California has a bill at this writing anyways on Governor Newsom's desk, Gavin Newsom, that would have also a 2035 deadline. Now, I've heard some things that actually might get vetoed. So again, by the time this comes out, maybe we'll know a little bit more. But still, it's just mind-boggling when you're looking at all that's needed to go into this. And we haven't even talked about the electric grid.
Very true. And we see it as challenging. We, a couple things that we see. Obviously, all of this right now, considering the prices of these units, is all dependent on government funding. And some of the organizations out there have the bell curve model of where the price is. It's up and it's coming down. So we're excited to see when that's going to get down to a realistic level. And, a couple things on that note. Going to have to work really hard with our districts to communicate in advance of what is to come. There's definitely a value proposition of what the savings will yield with fuel, maintenance, etc. But obviously the price has to come down. So we're going to have to build out the communication to our districts to be able to do that. And I really think that, there's some aggressive goals. There is a way to push back, within the law. There's, I think there's a 2-year pushback. And also, what's important there, some roadmaps came out a week or two ago, and there's a lot of challenges out there and a lot of unanswered questions. So a lot of this is just going to evolve, and the districts and also us as a contractor and also the New York School Bus Contractors Association are going to have to be vocal with New York State just to communicate what's reality. We do want to move this forward, but we have to do it together and it has to be sensible. So we're nervous, but reality is going to play a role there. Like what can happen with the OEM, what can the districts tolerate? And some of the biggest challenges that we saw was the chargers just were focused on the vehicles performing. Are they going to operate what we need to do? Are we going to be able to keep the interior cabin warm enough? And we got through all that. And that seemed to be the easy component. The biggest challenges was getting the V2G chargers dialed in precisely with the software working to the best ability to get the best rates, tying it in with the utility. And we had tremendous success with just finding the right people. It took a little time, but we found the right people at those companies, and also being able to connect it with utility really had great success. It just took much longer than we anticipated, which is something I would caution everyone. If you're planning infrastructure, make sure you got a good team and make sure you give yourself enough time. It was much harder than keeping that fleet rolling.
Absolutely. You mentioned V2G. It's interesting. So you guys are currently actively utilizing V2G?
Well, that's a good point. So we have we have the systems. However, at this moment, the utility is not prepared to be a partner at that. They know we have it, and it's a work in progress.
Yeah. So what we hear from a lot of folks, I know that early on that was used as one of the big reasons from a business standpoint to go electric, and we just have seen that across the board. Most of the utilities, they don't have the rates built out yet for what they're going to charge back or pay out, and then just from the standpoint of the technology, right? You guys said you've tested it. Have you seen in some of your tests the impact on range? Because we know, or even like the life of the battery, because we've talked with a lot of experts and they say, hey, what you got to realize is when you're putting energy back onto the grid, that's working your battery. That's degrading your battery more. So there's a lot, like you were pointing to, that has to be figured out and really has to be dialed in.
Yeah, that's the challenge. I think we were talking about that in Reno, just the battery.
Mm-hmm.
You're excited about pushing back to the grid and getting some funding that way, but you're right. It's going to challenge the battery to last. And those are all the areas that, we're nervous about, but I'm happy being part of this team, being able to, get ahead of this and learn the challenges, learn the positives, and just be ahead of this. It's, coming in late in the game is going to be tough. And this, having this math, having this data is going to be able to just lay out a plan for our districts where we're going to be able to spend on vehicles for a particular contract and show them where we're going to be with the other costs, whether it's, oil savings for the engine we don't have. And it's even just really encouraging. We even have a bunch of hybrid transit buses in our fleet, which have been amazing units that have just been dynamic in fuel savings and also brake life. So the technology of just having the electric components in there, it's an exciting time. It's just a lot to learn and a lot to move forward. But I think just being ahead of it and just having that communication with your customer is going to be very important in the next couple of years.
Absolutely. And you mentioned the funding where, so much of it is coming from the government, kind of seed money, if you will, and that we need to get that price parity where we know this funding is going to eventually dry up. But as I mentioned earlier, as we were recording this, EPA came out with its details on its 2023 rebate program. Have to ask you guys, did Suffolk, did they participate in the rebate last year? What about we had the competitive grant funding that just ran the application period over this summer. Now we have this rebate period open till January 31st. Will you participate and try to get some of those funds?
Yeah, absolutely. We've been successful with 2 EPA submittals, and there was also a TVIB component the last time as well that we were able to stack, which was a successful part of the puzzle to be able to get the prices to a really dynamic price. The last submittal, I guess it was this August, we did submit. We're excited with our submittal. We had also put together a nice video with some local partners, Drive Electric Long Island, WDI, Workforce Development Institute. So we brought in a lot of partners that were connecting on this electric movement and just trying to show that we have connectivity from, the customers we serve in the school business to the local community. So we're excited. Hopefully that video puts us over the top in our region and helps us become successful. But we've had a good rapport with the EPA folks.
Yeah. So I believe the over the summer competitive program, they're going to be announcing that fairly soon, the winners. Yes. So good luck on that.
Thank you.
And again, this was your first opportunity because they opened it up to contractors, and they're going forward and allowing that. But you just hit on something, and before I turn, I want to talk about the school bus driver shortage and school startup and some of your thoughts on technology. But before we turn that page, I want to ask you about workforce development. So, as with most school districts and other contractors out there, you have a maintenance operation, right? And so much of the electric school bus work is under warranty right now, and it's really being held close to vest by the OEMs and the dealers, as happens with really any new technology, right? But of course, the difference here is you have the electric drives versus the ICE system, internal combustion engine. How much does your previous work with the hybrids help you train your staff in the garage to be able to work on these buses full time once these buses come under warranty and the OEMs say, okay, hey, they're all yours?
Well, one trend we do see in our maintenance facilities is, that older generation of folks that have been, the mechanics digging into servicing these vehicles, they're retiring. The job is not as popular as it once was. So I think what's going to be interesting for us is, with added technology, do we see more youth play, a bigger role with joining us in these maintenance facilities? Is it a different job that we're able to recruit the youth that are coming out of technical programs? So we're excited about that because, hiring mechanics along with other jobs in the school bus business, it's been challenging. So this dynamic or switch to this technology, we're hoping it just yields some different employees that we're going to be able to bring in. So we have to also pivot a little bit to be able to make sure we attract those folks what's coming on board. So again, just going back to being early, there's so many components of planning that we just got to be involved with. I would say the training is a work in progress. Some of these OEMs have it at the dealerships, and we're craving to be able to get more in-depth training at our facilities. We're ready. We do a lot of warranty work for General Motors now. We're ready to take on more of what Cummins has to offer with the powertrain that we have on those Bluebirds. So it's coming. It's a little slow go, but we're anxiously awaiting. We've got some great folks on the floor and also in the supervisor offices that are ready for the technology, and they've been great assets. But we're looking to get to that next step. We're pushing to get there.
Yeah, exactly. So pivoting now to when you're talking about a workforce and attracting talent, of course, the driver shortage. And before you came on, you said that you were kind of all hands on deck today there at Suffolk with some driver shortage. Tell me, how did school startup go? There was a couple horror stories out there. Of course, the school bus driver shortage has been a big part of that. How did school startup go for you guys, and where are you guys currently right now with your driver shortage, and how does kind of the short and long-term prognostication look?
So I think two components to this school year. One would be maybe a full rebound from COVID, and the other part is there may be in this region some immigration that plays into children being
absolutely, yeah,
just bigger numbers in certain districts that we serve. So we had a plan coming into school opening that we felt was right on the money, and not a gigantic number, but it all means something when you're just trying to cover routes. So we're probably 25 routes plus of what we planned, and we see it right in the numbers. The kid counts are much elevated, double-digit percentage increases on some of the students coming into the system. So we had a plan for, say 12,000 students riding minivans, and that has definitely changed for us. So We had to add routes, and rather than being comfortable and cozy, we are stressed and quite busy, as you learned about 45 minutes ago.
Yeah.
So we're covering all our work. We are just at that red level of stress. And I would tell you, our training team is working very hard to onboard folks. The applications are rolling in. New York State with Governor Hochul was really good, with a lot of folks in the government that helped get it done. We were able to self-test third-party road testing, which has been a game changer for us, and really just allows us to keep the employee on site, so they're not going to DMV, taking another day. If there was a failure or the need for retest, we're able to do it much quicker. So that's helped us on board. So we're just catching up a little bit from school opening. So the stress level's up, and the driver shortage is definitely real. It's not as easy. Really, I said application flow is good. However, we need to build the drivers. So that's getting the CDL permit. We're looking for some creative solutions there with DMV, and it's basically like a 4 on the quick side to 6 week process to get a person from a regular license to the CDL. So we're building drivers, can't happen fast enough, and we'll get through it. It's just going to take us a little bit to catch up. That's all.
And how much is technology playing into that to help you guys with your operations? What is the big need that you guys have in technology, and maybe what is some of the technology that you're using now that's really helped move the needle for you guys?
Well, just talking about building routes in large buses. We switched routing software this January to a more dynamic system, much more, many more bells and whistles. But we enjoyed the technology. We were able to, I guess you'd say, rolled into the operation soft over the winter, and then have a good team in place that knew how to run the software for this August opening. And it's been really dynamic, whether, it's putting ride shares together, stacking runs, and being able to, tell us with dynamic time and mileage that we can do the route. So we're excited about that technology. It's able to keep us on track and fully utilize the vehicles that are out there. I think, something that no one wants to hear is, bell time changes. And that's really truly for the industry, and also just saving big dollars, within the schools, is to do bell time changes. Everybody wants to go to school at 8:30, 2:30. If we had sessions that were mandated to be what we'll call off peak, so some rides go in 8:30, the other ones go in 9:30, 9:45, and being able to stack runs like that, we could significantly reduce the demand of drivers and vehicles, and saving manpower, which yields big savings on added routes. So that's something that we can present. It's just very difficult for folks to want to, take on that battle, whether it's the challenges with, parents not wanting to go in the later session, or, teaching schedules set up. It's not easy, but there is a solution. And some of the technology we have can really demonstrate what savings are out there. If we adjust times, we could bring up scenarios and sandboxes and really prove out our points to be able to do it. But that's something we're interested in working with New York State with, whether they have the appetite to do it. It would be helpful for the industry, saving drivers and money.
Absolutely. And, before we go, I have to ask, because you just mentioned it, rideshare. One of the big trends we've seen with contractors is adding in their own internal rideshare, if you will, or like alternative transportation company. And of course, that differs between like the TNC Transportation Network company. Is that something that Suffolk, and obviously you said you were working with rideshare, is that something that you guys are looking to do and launch as a part of your business? Is it simply, more of kind of a partnership with what the school districts are using?
It's been a topic of discussion, and just to circle back a little bit, just in our van operation, the network is all neighboring districts, which has been a strategic part of our growth. We don't want to grow with contracts that really are outside of our, van network. So when we're putting programs together. We have a really robust system where we're able to, ride share, 2 kids from District A, 2 kids from District B, and put them together. So we're always doing that, building the van rounds out, sharing with neighboring districts, which is really great. We really yield some significant savings. Some districts, they're saving up to $800,000 per year on these shared programs, which has been a very successful way for us to operate our business model. And just, whether we're talking about like an Uber kind of rideshare program, some of our ideas there have been, where do parents need help? I talk with my brother, and he's like, the dad taxi, bringing the kid to dance, to diving, to swimming, to soccer. And, how do we help out parents? If we've got a lot of capability, whether it's a school van or like a Tahoe that's school certified, we could bring the school driver, add in like an Uber-like software program, and parents can pick rides. So I'm going to bring Tommy over to dance, and, that's something that's outside the district where they're paying for the ride. So we're trying to see what we could do with that. So we have the regular school route program. We can offer rides off peak, whether it's like, 3:30 through 6 p.m. at night, just bring a kid to the various things that they have just to help parents out. That's something we've explored. We have potential partners out there with software, but haven't rolled it out.
Yeah, well, it'd be interesting to see how everything evolves. Tommy, we could talk for another half an hour. Really interesting stuff. You guys are doing a mountain of work there at Suffolk on Long Island. Continue to fight the good fight. And again, congratulations on the Green Bus Fleet Award for the top local and regional green fleet there with your electric buses. And good luck with everything.
And Ryan, just want to shout out to you and the team. We really had a great time in Reno. It was our first time out there, and enjoyed the program, and really it was something that we would attend in the future. We
Awesome.
Really appreciate it. So thank you all.
Definitely. You're our guest anytime. And I know you have some group coming out to TSD conference here in November. So looking forward to catching up with you there as well. Thanks again, Tommy. Give our best to all the family there at Suffolk.
Thank you.
All right, guys. So happy to be back. Ryan, great conversation with you and Tommy. Man, they got a lot going on in New York lately, a lot to take on. That electric bus thing, too. It's a big deal in New York, so we'll see what happens. I know Tommy and his team came out to STN EXPO in Reno and Green Bus Summit, really enjoyed it. So we hope more of you can join us at our conferences. We got STN EXPO, Green Bus Summit, Transportation Director Summit, the TSD Conference. There's so much to take in that we offer. So we want to thank Ryan, Tommy. Thank you guys for jumping on, having that conversation. Also want to appreciate our sponsors, TransFinder, the Propane Education Research Council, and Adroit. Guys, you can go to stnonline.com to check out all the analysis on everything happening in the school transportation industry. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to pods. Don't forget, you can email us with questions. We'll hopefully be able to tackle and answer for you. info@stnmedia.com. Nation, we love you. We'll see you next week.